Welcome back, everyone. So, it is a pretty damn exciting day. Patch 9.1 has hit the public test realms for World of Warcraft. And that does actually mean that a bunch of it is playable, a whole bunch has been data mined, and today, what I'm going to do is bring it all together and basically give you the TLDR, an overall view of what the crack is at this current stage in time. And it's an interesting one because we do have the initial experience present, we have the new subzone of Corthia present, there are changes to the Maw, and a bunch of other miscellaneous things, but there's also quite a bit missing. Like, we really have no idea what's going on with Torghast right now in terms of overall systems changes. So, quite a lot to get into, really. Of course, speaking of getting into things, you can get into our Patreon, where I just put up the post for this month's fresh, new, exciting loot. And also, we've got very big plans there. We're basically, well, you know, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. There will be podcasts there very, very soon. So, that'll be going on. But okay, with that said, let's go. First up, the initial experience of patch 9.1. Basically, you get a quest, you go to Oribos, and then it turns out that Ardenweald is being attacked, and that overall the Jailer is continuing his plan of trying to get those sigils from the Covenant leaders. Now, I'm not going to jump like super into the lore or anything like that. I don't want to just throw spoilers at you. Anything there will be very clearly signposted. I would say that this initial questing content that sort of leads us into, you know, a bit of the Maw and then into Corthia is extremely what you would expect from World of Warcraft. And what I mean there is that it's basically a vehicle for in-game cutscenes with essentially next to zero gameplay. So my character was item level, you know, about 213, I believe, and I completely face stomped everything, right? You know, would throw an elite mob at me, that elite mob would fall over in, you know, just a few aim shots. So I had this thing where the events that were going on around me seemed like they could be cool, especially if those maybe cutscenes or cinematics were there, but ultimately the gameplay, it still does have all of those gripes that I think many of us have with World of Warcraft, sort of open world narrative gameplay, where there basically is no gameplay. You're just you fight mobs, the mobs fall over and die nearly instantly, you never engage your brain, and I think that does lead to it not being an engaging experience. It also doesn't help that in this case, there is, I think, a continued lack of innovation from the team where it just all feels very run-of-the-mill. So you do get cool events. It's actually quite nice seeing, you know, the Covenants coming together, actually taking to the field and doing stuff. That is, I think, way more effective than what we've seen of the Covenants thus far. It just has that issue where, you know, the gameplay is, well, the gameplay is just not particularly gameplay. It's kind of just stuff that is a vehicle for the narrative events to happen. And speaking of that and the narrative events, I'll say that it's really quite fast and loose with logic. I mean, yeah, that's a bunch of it. You're just kind of being shifted through it pretty quickly. Yeah, so it's just very average, I guess, is that initial experience. Now, what eventually happens, though, is the events of Ardenweald, they draw to a close. You end up, of course, venturing to the Maw, and that is where we get to learn about Corthia, which is this new realm. Corthia is basically this kind of like ancient hidden city full of lost knowledge, almost certainly from the first ones. It's full of, you know, there's attendants and stuff there, and obviously the Jailer wants to pull in to get some knowledge. We want to stop him from that, maybe get the knowledge ourselves, and of course our friend Venari is extremely interested in accessing that knowledge and doesn't really care about the Jailer because she's a broker, she's doing brokery stuff. I mean, there's a broker boss later on, and if you just, like in the instance content, and if you look at the dungeon journal, I mean, this broker, like, it's all these cosmic abilities about, you know, supernovas and stuff, and it just kind of further reinforces that the brokers are so vast in their knowledge and of all that cosmic stuff that, yeah, I guess the run-of-the-mill day-to-day stuff doesn't really bother them too much. So we're doing that with Venari, which all actually does feel pretty decent. You know, you go to the Maw now, and what's different is that the Covenants are there. And, you know, quite soon on, you do unlock mounted gameplay within the Maw, and you basically end up with this situation where you are given A bunch of quests with Venari to set up your new situation in the Maw, so leading you to Corthia, setting up the teleporters, all of that jazz. You get that, and then you get the stuff with the new Covenant Strike feature. So that's introduced where you go back to the original Maw area, you do your Covenant Strike. And then in Corthia right now, it is a bunch of quests. There are dailies. They are very much your run-of-the-mill, kill some stuff, fill up a bar, whatever. And those all are contributing to a meta bar at the minute, which will take a number of days to complete. And that does mean that we don't actually have a full picture of what Corthia is actually going to be right now. So you might be wondering then, what are these Covenant Strikes? How does all of that work? Well, obviously, we're very early on in this 9.1 journey, but what I can tell you is that Covenant Strikes, to me, they feel less like Legion invasions. They feel almost more reminiscent of some of the stuff from patch 8.3, where, you know, whenever the zone was active, it could be, you know, one faction or the other, right? So, you know, the explorer-y people or the like Egyptian dudes in the Zone of Uldum, right? So in this particular case, when I logged in, the current active Covenant Strike was for the Kyrians. So what that meant is there was a bunch of Kyrian NPCs there that were actually working together with other Covenants. And essentially there, I had to complete 4 quests. When I completed those 4 quests, it then sent me on a final quest to sort of finish it off, and then that was it. That was the Covenant Strike. Now, it remains to be seen how much of that will respawn on a daily basis, because when I looked in the map, it said that Covenant Strike was basically going to last for 3 days. And, you know, that's half a week, and that's why it reminded me of the patch 8.3 stuff. Overall, this Covenant Strike took me about 15 minutes to complete, and I do not know how much more content there will be in the Covenant Strike system, or what the frequency of that strike content is. Right now, it very much looks like it could be 15 minutes of gameplay every 3 days. I am just not that sure right now. So that's basically that. And I would say that so far, everything that I've seen is quite bog standard World of Warcraft, quite unambitious. It doesn't really push the envelope forward. It just seems very standard. And I suppose you know, that could be expected because this isn't, you know, 9.2, the big patch with, you know, many months of lead-up time, like, say, Rise of Ashara or maybe the Argus patch. No, this is a little bit more akin to, you know, 7.2 or something like that. It's one of the, as far as big large patches go, it is like a little more one of the smaller ones. That's what seems evident to me at this stage. So basically, pretty average, pretty par for the course is where we're at right now. That said, there's nothing that seems like it's going to be actively very annoying for players. So the Eye of the Jailer, that is something that goes. Mounted gameplay in the Maw, you unlock that very quickly indeed, and that is active in both Corthia and the like original Maw area. So a bunch of pain points are removed, and I think it overall is an improvement on the gameplay of the Maw zone. Now that said, the original Maw content with Venari basically does seem to still be there intact. It just really probably won't matter at all. And that's kind of how they're dealing with that. So it's basically being sort of sunsetted, but it's still there and you can do it for, you know, rep and stuff like that. I mean, Stygia is actually still a relevant currency. I mean, there's a few mounts in the new Death's Advance Quartermaster that cost Stygia. Now, on the topic of that Death's Advance faction, that is the new faction for, I believe, the Corthia zone. Now, there is going to be some catch-up gear and stuff like that. Things have been data mined, but when you actually go in-game, that vendor has got, like, a mount and some other stuff. Basically, the Quartermaster is not complete, so I'm going to wait until whatever that gearing and catch-up system, you know, I'm going to wait till that's actually implemented in-game before I fully talk about that, because, I mean, it's clearly not in-game, which means Blizzard do not intend for it to be tested yet. Now, that said, and I think a convenient segue for us talking about the systems that are so far viewable from what we've got of the patch so far, there is the new catch-up gear. Now, whenever I did that Covenant Strike, took about 15 minutes, what I got was a chest. And that chest contained an item level 203 epic piece of gear and 200 Stygia. So that is one way that there will be catch-up gear. It remains to be seen how else that gear could be obtained. You know, will there be a currency or progression in Corthia that lets us purchase that off a vendor? It seems likely there will be something, but I just want to wait and see what it actually is like in-game when Blizzard implement it. So there's going to be some form of catch-up, basically. Now, moving on then, there is also what's going on with our soul binds. So there are empowered sockets, which will basically just make, it'll make the conduits more powerful. There's also more conduit slots and capstone powers that are being added to the soul binds. Now, I look at those capstone powers and I kind of think, oh, that's just more annoying stuff for Blizzard to balance, and it doesn't seem too exciting, so I don't really care about that. But I will say that just getting more conduit slots, I mean, that actually can be good and fun character customization. I'm of the view that potency slots are really boring. I almost wish they weren't there because, just keep the game balanced and let us, tool around with our utility and stuff like that. So, certainly for the paladins who want a bit more movement speed, that'll all be quite nice when they get some more conduit slots in their soul binds. Now, of course, you might be wondering, how do I unlock these things? Renown. There's just another 40 renowns. That's what that's going to be. So we assume, you'll be getting 2 per week by default, and then whatever you get by doing the campaign. But then again, we do not exactly know if they're going to change up the weekly Renown acquisition in this patch. Part of that's because they released patch notes, but they didn't release a blue post explaining their intent and where the current version is at and what we should be taking a look at, which has made it just a little bit tricky to parse what's going on with PTR and to really know Blizzard's intent. But that's what's going on there anyway. Now, when I actually went through the Renown levels, gotta admit, they felt super sparse in terms of rewards. We know there is new Covenant gear that's been datamined, but it's just not sitting there in the reward track right now. So we basically have no idea, other than what's there on the Renown track right now, which is basically a new title at the end, as well as 2 increases to your anima gains from world quests and unrated PvP gear upgrades, as well as world quest item upgrades. So it's that usual thing, which honestly I think basically sucks. I think the Renown is an awful system that's been damaging to the game. I mean, it's, as an example, for flying, you're probably just going to have to wait multiple weeks. Not that it's like you can't earn flying, you just have to wait for the Renown time gating to get to the stage where flying is just unlocked, right? Which I don't think is super exciting. And when you look through the Renown track, it is basically just piecemealing out your upgrades to to the soul binds and stuff. And I get the Blizzard want to throttle that so that people can't know life and get way more power than other players, but right now it's that thing where it feels only like a limitation and there's not really much in the way of cool rewards. So yeah, not feeling great about the Renown system. For some reason Blizzard like it. I don't though, and I think it's just going to continue, so that's that. Yeah, anyway. Weird. Now, in terms of gearing, there are no hints of the new raid gearing system. At BlizzCon, we heard talk of domination gear and that they were doing something there. Right now, 0 hints of that in PTR. There are some cool things I'll talk about in a moment with the Sylvanas gear, but that's basically that. But that said, bonus rolls have actually been data mined. So it could be the case that Blizzard have maybe decided that domination gear would be too time-consuming and complex, and maybe they should just do bonus rolls again. Perhaps that could be the case, but those bonus rolls are not, they're not evident in-game yet, so it's just data mining. Who knows? Now, in terms of other things, Torghast. So we know now that Torghast is going to be going up to 12 layers. But we can't actually go into Torghast right now on the PTR. It's blocked off, and we do not know about any other changes. I think Torghast needs a lot of change. I think many of us have got high hopes for what Torghast could be post-changes, but right now, we do not know. It's clearly not ready for PTR. Now, in terms of other systems-related things, well, Raider.io might, actually, very much seems to be a thing that's going to be integrated into World of Warcraft by default now. So Blizzard have actually worked with the Raider.io team. Blizzard, my read is that they've consulted with the Raider.io team a little bit so that they can make their system really good. But there is going to, at least according to the data mining, be some sort of Raider.io-like thing in-game. Now, this is the sort of thing where I see that and I think, oh dear, you know, I don't really like that. I don't like instituting the gotta go fast esportsy gameplay in a MMORPG that much. I don't particularly like that, but I can understand why Blizzard would do this, because you'll have loads of players who don't really know that much about add-ons and things. They log in and they're like, oh cool, I'm being declined for all of these groups. I don't know why, I don't have the add-on. So you can see why Blizzard would maybe want to implement their own system there. But obviously that's contentious, and for some people, and I could be a bit included in that, you could see it as Blizzard putting their own official stamp of approval on a game system that a lot of people don't feel great about, that's been facilitated by an add-on. So that's basically what's going on there. Okay, for other systems things then, we did actually notice that there are Crafter's Mark level 3 items, and there's also the prestigious Crafter's Mark, and those will upgrade gear to eye level 180 and 200 respectively. So there's a little bit going on there for the gearing game. And really that's it from what we can tell thus far, right? I don't want to go in half-cocked based on a bunch of data mining and, you know, draw a bunch of conclusions and make assumptions and things. Very much here I'm trying to talk about what we know a little bit more solidly. Okay, next up, it's time for a little bit of a talk about the lore. There are some interesting highlights. Obviously, skip ahead if you're not really wanting to hear any of the lore. But basically, you've got the initial experience, which in terms of gameplay is basically completely flat and boring, but in terms of lore and events, yeah, there is space for plenty of little cutscenes and things. It could be neat. Now, what really called out to me the most was reading the dungeon journal entry for the Sylvanas encounter, though, which is the final one of the new raid. And in there, basically the setup is we're chasing the jailer up Torghast, right? And Sylvanas is trying to stop us. And eventually some big thing happens atop Torghast, and then we end up, I guess, confronting Sylvanas at, like, the Arbiter's area in Oribos. So that seems really cool. That seems like a massive just, you know, set pieces and cool stuff going on for the boss fight, and I guess some pretty cool lore too. So that's kind of neat. Then also I noticed there's a boss that's basically the remnants of Ner'zhul. So I'd obviously been hoping for a lot more of Ner'zhul. I hope that it's not just, you know, Ner'zhul mixed with Lord Marrowgar as just a big boss that we just sort of kill and that's him gone forever. If that is the case, I'll be extremely disappointed in what's going on with Ner'zhul. But yeah, so Ner'zhul appears in a boss fight, as does Garrosh actually, where he is basically functioning as an anima battery, which is kind of neat, so who knows, we'll get a little bit there. There's also a Helya Odin subplot going on where basically the Eye of the Jailer is Odin's eye, right? The one that Odin, you know, traded over long ago. So I expect that plot line to continue a little bit. And there's also a lot of First Ones teasing. Like there's a fight, a Guardian of the First Ones. There's this like big mech dude who, you know, feels quite Titanish, uses a lot of arcane magic, it would seem. So that'll be interesting, learning a little bit more about the First Ones. And then on that, Corthia is clearly the home to many secrets. That seems to be why Venari is so interested in it, so that'll be quite neat. Mal'Ganis also has been data mined. I do not know the context for that, other than we do know that Dreadlords are going to be in Corthia, and there's also female Dreadlords that I believe have been data mined, so I think that's the first time we've seen them. So there's that going on. And then another thing for the data mining is Devourers. There's these new, like, Devourers that look so alien and creepy. They're really awesome bits of work. But what's neat there, and I guess it's that thing, the Devourers are kind of cool in the lore, in that they basically come from the in-between. So there's something really spooky and fundamental and primal, as if the Devourers are, you know, what exist in the, like, raw plane of death of the First Ones then ordered, right? So I imagine we'll get some new lore, some developments there, because we're seeing these new Devourer models. And that's basically that. I mean, there are some other highlights, like Saurfang is a trinket now. It's called, like, Old Warrior's Soul. I hope we get more of Saurfang than just being able to equip him for some more damage. I thought that was funny, though. That's mostly that, though. It basically seems like this is where the Jailer's actually making moves, where things are actually happening. It very much does make 9.0 feel like a prologue to this which is the real action and the real story. So moving on then, there's also the realm of cosmetics to talk about, where we do have 4 new transmoggable sets of glasses. I think, were 2 more that were data-mined, so there's that. Another thing that the transmog people will be happy about is the individual transmogrification of shoulders. So that'll be really cool. There'll be a bunch of new looks you can make via that. There's also new Covenant transmog sets, and I really quite like these. They're more simple. And I think there are many transmog looks where that's just a really, really good option. And right now, I don't believe we know where they come from. Because if you go through the Renown track, they're not there, so who knows. There's then 10 mounts related to Corthia. That is split between achievements, the Paragon box for the new reputation. There's 3 from the raid. There's the Maw hand mount that they showed off during BlizzCon. There's the Torghast charger and the new PvP Gorms. Plus, of course, a bunch of pets as well, so there will be some stuff going on there. So that's most of the initial stuff covered for the cosmetics. Then for some miscellaneous things, well, as I said, Saurfang is a trinket now, that's kind of funny. There's a new skybox for Oribos. It's all like dark and creepy and twisted looking, so that's really neat. Then there's something that's got me very excited as a hunter. The bow that you get from Sylvanas replaces Killshot with a new ability. I mean, that is so cool for a bit of loot to do, to change your ability like that. So that is really exciting. That means as a hunter, I definitely want to kill Sylvanas and get her bow. Or defeat Sylvanas anyway. And yeah, you've got Sylvanas' bow, cloak, dagger, and shoulder. Those models all, drop from their respective items, so, I mean, that's really cool. And there seems to be some cool effects there. But that said, I should say that a bunch of the raid gear hasn't really been implemented yet, so we'll just have to see. Because, I mean, as I said, domination gear is something they hinted at during BlizzCon Online, but we've seen no evidence of it, so I don't want to draw any conclusions right now. And I guess for Sylvanas, check out our Clips channel for, we had a discussion on, the redemption of Sylvanas, if it's even possible. If you want to see me a good bit more fired up than usual, then I think that's a clip to watch about her anyway. Okay, opinions then. Right, let's talk about, where I'm actually feeling on all of these things. Corthia. Very much remains to be seen. It's like, as I believe Preach titled for his video, could it be the Isle of Thunder 2? I would say absolutely not. Absolutely not. I don't really think Mike thinks that. The Isle of Thunder 2, sort of thought from him was that, on PTR, you're left with this bar that you've got to fill by doing quests. And I think the hopeful assumption is that once that bar is full, some new exciting stuff will go on, because as just about everybody has experience in PTR, Corthia is very sparse and is, I'd say, almost unbelievably conservative in its design of, the content that you're doing there, right? Doesn't seem super exciting to me, but it also doesn't seem super annoying. It seems very much like a bog standard slice of here's a patch island, but, not something to get fired up and excited about because it seems really kind of boring right now, but also not something that will be a big pain in the ass like the Maw could have been to some. I think really we need more information from Blizzard. It would have been great if they gave us a blue post actually explaining what the gameplay intent with Corthia is, because right now, you go in, you do a bunch of very bog standard dailies, and you're just kind of like, what's going on here? I don't get it. So that's the Corthia situation. Basically, we just need a full view of these systems, and we don't have it yet. I will, though, say, this is one thing for me. It's another gray and brown endgame zone. I appreciate the sort of devourer colored, Animus stream sort of highlight colors that are going on there, but it's it was nice having Nashatar and Mechagon, but I think of the Antoran Wastes, Krokun, the Broken Shore, the Maw, stuff like that, where some of these endgame zones, it's yeah, I get it, they have to be all horrible and spooky, but it's the Timeless Isle was just a really nice place to be because it was nice. Macari was a nice place to be because it was nice. These gray and brown endgame zones are really, really becoming a drag for me, to be honest. I mean, Tanan Jungle, I guess, as well. I'm really getting bored of them. I wish Blizzard would try to work out just more visually interesting endgame zones. Because, you know, if all this gameplay was going on in somewhere that was as beautiful as Bastion, I could certainly say I'd enjoy my time there more. So, overall, I'm feeling decidedly in the middle about the world content. Really doesn't seem like it's something to get this, you know, to get this patch or to resub for. I'm very excited about the raid. I will say that much. I mean, the raid seems to be, you know, full of cool lore characters, big set pieces, neat fights. I mean, one of them is the 9, right? And then you think about, you know, the 9 ravens take flight, each seeks a prize, you know, that old God Whispers line. Is that actually referencing this fight in the upcoming raid? The Sylvanas fight, as I said, basically just sounds fucking awesome, right? So that's really, really exciting for me as a raider. I will say, you know, I've got that funny thing of I'm worried about the storytelling, because from what I played, it just felt a bit odd. And there was also things like, I'm there in the battle for Ardenweald. Why is relaxing harp music playing? And you might say to me, but Michael, you dickhead, it's the PTR, the music isn't done yet. And usually I would actually agree with you and say yes. But I remember doing the final stage, like the big calamitous battle of my 9.0 Ardenweald campaign, and it was clearly stuff where I was supposed to be, you know, as a player, really engaged and knowing that my covenant was in peril, and it was just relaxing harps were being played, and that was the in-game soundtrack. It would be like, imagine those scenario moments in, say, Shadow Moon Valley and Warlords of Draenor, where really big major plot moments are happening, right? And, you know, you've got the Iron Horde music, like, pumping in your ears. You're like, oh, shit, there's Valen doing a thing, and Urel's all having her struggle. But imagine instead of, like, the big pumping Iron Horde music, it was just, like, relaxing harps. Very tonally inconsistent, and I really hope they fix that up, because it really pulled me out of the moment in the 9.0 campaign stuff, and I hope they don't do it again. And then there's just stuff like, it's just the lore of, like, the reason why the Covenants can go to the Maws because of, like, a special quirk, you know, with our anima, that the MacGuffin character can, like, bind to the thing and the stuff and the Waystones. It's just, like, it doesn't really land. It just kind of feels like, magic. But, you know, when you want to take the fantasy world seriously, it just feels like they kind of rush through that stuff so fast that it sort of struggles to make sense. So it's like the storytelling, I'm just sitting there and I'm like, ugh. But then the lore, I'm like, oh, cool. City of Ancient Secrets? Awesome, fun. I want to see what's in there. So that's kind of my split situation right now. And then in terms of other things, you know, what I obviously want to see is what is the raid like? What is the mega dungeon like? Because I don't believe it's available yet. And what is the Torghast revamp like? I think that a lot of it hinges on those things, you know, being in a good state. I then guess for the Mythic Plus players, they're probably going to get a new system instead of Raider IO that is officially supported by Blizzard, a new affix, and that'll mostly be that, unless they make some iterations to the Valor Point system. But again, no hints of that over on the test realm or the Datamining. So there you go. That's patch 9.1. This feels like a patch that should have been so much sooner. In my head, the scope of this patch makes it really feel like it should have came out, you know, closer, right? This feels like the sort of wait we're going to have to experience to see this in live is the sort of wait that really would make you want a Rise of Ashara-sized patch or a Argus-sized patch, but instead we're getting maybe a smaller than 7.2 patch. It's kind of hard to tell. Now, obviously, we've not been able to test stuff like the you know, like the full Covenant campaign, because it's basically one campaign that everybody goes on. But I guess I will say, and it is unfortunate, but I do have to say, because I can't lie to you, based on the essentially, you know, neat moments, but overall really not good campaign that I played, you know, in the start of this expansion for my Covenant, and then the kind of lackluster set PC stuff that I've seen in PTR, where, you know, the game, there's just no gameplay. It's like I'm playing a video game, but nothing I do matters. I can't say I'm excited for the new Covenant campaign. I mean, I know that over in Final Fantasy XIV, it's like if you fail their equivalent of that content a bunch of times, it actually prompts you if you want to do easy mode, which kind of shows you that they're actually willing to make that content be, you know, reasonable, so you actually have to play it. But I can't understand why Blizzard like designs all this stuff and then makes it so that none of the mechanics matter and you can play it with your eyes closed because I don't know, man, you're just not engaged. So there you go. Bit of a mixed bag, but certainly if I think about the content I'll actually be playing, it is mega dungeon hard modes and big new raid that seems awesome. That does seem really fun. And if they can then nail Torghast, then basically I'll be very happy and we'll get a lot of gameplay out of this patch. I just, I try to advocate for the casual players. I try to think about the players who are maybe playing not in a guild, who just want to do some fun reps, earn some cool rewards, and I'm not 100% sure how well this is stacking up for them. I mean, certainly they'll appreciate some more anima from world quests, but it's like, yeah, we just can't see Corthia coming together right now. Need to see more. That's basically that. That's it for this video. I hope this has basically got you a TLDR of what I'm thinking and the core things that are happening. The plan is to do in-depth looks at things as soon as it's possible to do that with a reasonable level of quality and assuredness that what's being talked about is representative of what we will all, of course, get when this goes live. So there you go. Let me know what you think. Thank you for watching. If you want to support us, get some cool loot, and pretty soon some podcasty stuff, then the Patreon is the place. That's it from me. Thank you for watching. See you next time.